Okay, you got Fusion started. Let's go ahead and try to draw this simple little block. I'm going to go ahead and I was originally going to do this simple block, and then I was going to do the second block, but they're so similar to each other. I'm just going to do it once, and I don't think we need to do that first little one. So if you missed the first one, that's not a big deal. It's not one you handed in. We're just going to do the secondary block. All right, to get started, you're going to go up here to the top left corner where it says Create Sketch, and you click on that button that says Create Sketch. When this comes up, you see all your different planes down there. You see this plane, which is your top plane, your front plane, and your right side plane. We're going to create the drawing down here on this one that is your top plane. So you click on that, and when you do that, you see your X direction going side to side, your Y direction going up and down. This center point is called the origin, kind of a little target there. That's your origin. It's very important. We're going to use that a lot. To the left of the origin is negative numbers. To the right is positive numbers. Up is positive in the Y. Down is negative in the Z. So that's kind of the way all this is. We always try to start our drawings and center them up around the origin. You don't start on the corner of the origin, but you center them around the origin. It helps later in other things you're going to do on more advanced drawings. So it's a good habit to get used to doing it here from the beginning. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to our rectangle command, and we're going to do a 2-point rectangle. So I'm going to click there. The first point of my rectangle, I'm going to start up here in my top left quadrant somewhere. So just anywhere up there, I'm going to click, pull down and around to the bottom right quadrant, and I'm going to click again. So there I've created that rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and hit Escape to cancel out that command, much as what we did in AutoCAD. And now what we can do is we can play with this a little bit. I'm going to click and hold on that top line when I highlight it blue. And notice I can move that line up and down. If I click on this line over here on the right, I can move it side to side. If I click on this corner, I can stretch it, in 2 directions. So that's what I want to do here to start with. What I want you to do is right there, I have it approximately perfectly centered around that origin. I don't want you to have it perfectly centered. Make it a little bit off. So there, I have more space over here on the left and more space on the bottom than what I do here. So it's a little bit off center. It'll make this next step a little bit visually easier to do. All right, so now what we're going to do is I went ahead and hit Escape to deselect my object. I'm going to come up here above back to Create, and if I click on this bottom arrow for Create, I can open up a few more options. I'm going to scroll down there and I'm going to go to the Point option. Now what I'm going to do with the Point option is we need to do what's called fully constrain this sketch, which means you're locking it in place both by position, so where it is on the screen, and by size, the dimensions of it. So the first thing we're going to do is working towards locking it in place for the position. So to do that, I'm going to take my cursor, I'm on the point command, I'm going to hover over this line. Notice when I hover over this line, it gives me the little nearest box or OSNAP. We're used to that from CAD. If I go here to the middle of it, slide close to the middle, notice what happens. A little triangle shows up. So if I click there, I'm going to put this point at exactly the midpoint of that line, and I want to do that. So I'm going to click, and it appeared as a little black dot there. I'm still in my point command, so now I'm going to go down this line on the right, again, slide down until I'm in the middle. Oops, right there, my midpoint appeared, my little triangle, and I'm going to click. So now I have a point on the top line, a little black dot, and on the line on the right. I'm done with my point command, so I'm going to hit Escape and cancel out of that. And now I'm going to go to my next part. My next part is actually centering this block up. That was kind of the previous step we needed to do to center this. And to do that, we're going to come up to this area that says Constraints. Some of these up in the constraints should look somewhat familiar. This one here is tangent. We know what tangent is. We've seen that symbol before. Equal, parallel, perpendicular. This one just locks it into place. We don't use this one a lot. It's not a good one to use for most things. Midpoint, concentric, collinear, symmetry, and then curvature. I never have really used curvature. It's a new one for Fusion. The ones we're going to look at is the first one on this list, horizontal/vertical. This will lock things in horizontally and vertically. So we're going to click on it, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to this point on the top line, click on the point on the top line, come down here, click on my origin, and notice what happens when I do that. That box shifted to the right just a little bit. And now that midpoint that I selected, that point is lined up with the origin. I'm going to do the same thing to this one on the right side. Click on that point right there, come over here and click on the origin. And again, notice it shifted the whole thing up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. And now notice what this does. My top line is locked into place. When I slide it up and down, it moves the bottom line also. If I move it side to side, it moves the other side. It keeps this thing perfectly centered around that origin. And that's what we're looking for. Now what we need to do is we need to we need to lock this into this shape. And we're going to do that by using a dimension. So up here back in my create toolbar, I'm going to click on sketch dimension. And here I'm going to dimension the width of this block. So I'm going to go on this line. And here's one thing, and I showed you this on another drawing, but here's one thing. If I come over here and hover over this top line, I can click and I can pull the dimension up. The bad thing with this is, you guys are so new at this can get you in a little bit of trouble and cause you problems later on, because I'm actually just dimensioning the length of that top line at, whatever length I type in. So then that means my bottom line could be a different length. If some of these constraints over here, the parallel constraints or the horizontal constraints go away, it can really cause you issues. So a better habit to get into is this. Instead of dimensioning that length of that top line, I want to dimension from this line, so I'm going to click on it, all the way over to this line, so I'm going to click on it, and then pull my dimension up and above. Notice those two lines on the side are highlighted blue, so it's giving me the length between those two lines instead of the length of the top line. It's a better thing to do. So on this block, we're going to make it 4 inches wide, so I'm going to click there and just type 4. Oops. So, okay, there it goes. It was lagging a little bit. Then I'm going to click on the top line down to the bottom line, pull it over to the side and click, and I'm going to make it 2. So I made a little 4x2 block there, and that's perfect. Notice how it's all black. It's all locked into place. I'm going to hit escape here. If I click and hold on this, I can't move this around. It's all locked into place, and it won't move. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish that sketch, and it should put it into an isometric view like that. Fusion, I'm noticing, doesn't always do that. So if it didn't put it in a nice isometric view and you're still looking here at the top view of this, just hold your shift key down and rotate this around into a nice isometric view. It's a little bit easier to tell what you're doing next. So again, that shift and middle mouse button to rotate it around, much as what you're used to for CAD. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to come over here and I'm going to click on this extrude button. With this extrude button, we're going to click on it. Typically, it automatically recognizes that part. It doesn't always. So if it doesn't, you just come out here and you click on the center of this, and it recognizes that. So that's what we're going to extrude. With this, if you grab the arrow, you can drag it up. You can drag it the other direction, and drag this out, and type in here what you want to drag that out to. However, we want to keep it centered around the origin. So we want to go above and below this line both, just not in one direction. To do that, we have to come over to this little box and adjust something. So what we're going to adjust is where it says direction. We're going to adjust that to symmetric. So what that does is it does symmetrical on each side of the origin plane. It goes in both directions. Now the next thing we have to change, and I don't like that it defaults to this, which is half length. So it gives me the length from the origin up. I want to know the overall length. So I want to know the whole length. And I want the whole length of this to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go there and type 1.5 and hit enter. And that should look beautiful. If your block is looking at this shape and orientation, it looks symmetrical to this, you're looking great. And that block there, that part of it is done. All right, next, what we're going to do. And actually, I should tell you just a little bit on this one. If your block doesn't look like this, and oh, it looks like it's extruded way too far, don't undo it, don't cancel it. We can just adjust it here. This is one of the most powerful things with Inventor and Fusion. Is, okay, if it's not the right height and it's extruded too far, come down here to this area and hover over this little thing. Notice it says extrusion there. Well, you extruded it wrong maybe. So double click on that, and it brings you back up to this extrusion box. Maybe you forgot to check this thing to the whole length. Maybe you had it on half length and it's way too tall. Maybe you typed in the wrong number. Whatever it is, change it and go okay, and it fixes it or updates it. If it's the wrong shape and it's really too wide or just the wrong shape, maybe you made a mistake on the dimensions. So come over here, hover over this piece that says sketch. Let me pause there for a second. It's not saying sketch, but trust me, this one says sketch if you hover over it. There it is, sketch. Double click on that and maybe change your sketch. Maybe you didn't have it 4x2. Change it so where it's in is the correct measurements there. Once that's done, finish your sketch, and it updates it to this drawing. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put a notch in this drawing. Now, here's one thing that's a thing with AutoCAD, or sorry, with Fusion and Inventor both. Keeping your sketches as simple as possible is good. Making a really complex sketch that has 20, 30, 40, 100 dimensions in it is not good. It's just not good for the performance of your parts and all that. It's better to make simple sketches and simple extrusions. So to do that, to follow with that same strategy, we're going to go over here and go create new sketch. And we're going to click on this top surface of our block. So it spins that around. Now I'm looking at the top surface of this. I'm once again going to create a rectangle, 2-point rectangle. So I'm going to go up there and pick that. The first point of my rectangle, notice I have that little nearest symbol appearing again when I'm hovering over that line. I want to click there and attach it to that line there. Come down and below and attach to this line down here. Now what that's done for me, I'm going to hit escape, is notice this line is black here on the top, means it's constrained to that top line. This one's constrained to the bottom line. The only thing we can adjust is the width of our block. So now we need to set the size of that notch that we're going to cut. So we're going to come up here to our dimension toolbar. I'm going to dimension from this line on the left to this line on the right. Click above, and I'm going to dimension that at 2 inches. Next, what we need to do is now notice this thing, it's set to 2 inches. I can't change the size of it, but now I slide it all around. So the position of it's not locked yet. So now I need to constrain it for the position. A few different ways you could do that. You could put a midpoint, or you could put a point on the middle of it and constrain it to the origin. But not always do you want this part centered. So what I want you to do instead is to do this. I want you to use a dimension. I'm going to dimension from this line on the left to this blue line here. Pull it up and above, and I'm going to dimension that at 1 inch. So I put in a 1 inch dimension there, and there we go. Notice that sketch is all black. Everything's locked into place, and that's what we're looking for. We're going to go ahead and finish our sketch. Once again, we're going to go to extrude. When you go to extrude, notice this time it does not highlight anything at all. Here, it's because you can select. I could extrude this part. I could extrude this part. I could extrude both of these two parts just so I click on them. But what I want to do is I want to extrude this middle part. So I'm going to click on it, and there is that. Now notice, when I grab this and pull it up, if I look over here, it says join. So it's going to join this to the block. I want to, however, go down. So notice what happens when I go down. It automatically changes to cut, and it changes to red. So I want to do a cut, but first, before we do the cut, I want to show you a couple other options. You have the intersect. It will keep just where it intersects. You have a new body, which will create a new little body of it. It's not connected to it, or a whole new component. We probably won't get into these last two options at all because that's a little bit more advanced. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go cut, and we're going to cut in as a minus 0.5, and we're going to go OK. So that made a nice little cut into this block, a 1/2 inch deep, and that's great. What we're going to do now is we're going to save this. So to save it, we're going to go up to File and down to Save. Now for yours, when you go to save this, you're going to have a default folder that opens up. My default folder is called My First Project. Yours was a little bit different name. It's My Something Project. Just save it right there is great. Later, we're going to create some separate folders, but for these first little practice drawings, we're just going to save them there in that default folder. I want you to name it, and let me see. I'm going to save mine in a little bit different place. I'm going to save mine here underneath the demo block. I want you to save it as block 1. Oops, not knock, blah, blah, block 1. And go save. And there our block 1 is saved. That's great. You're done with block 1. I'll do another little video on block 2 and the assembly.